We're back at RPM Motorsports again, so I can finish up this project, hopefully. The plan for today is to get the intercooler system mounted, plumbed, wired, all that good stuff. And then I'm going to build a cold air for it, and then I should be ready for a tune, which is pretty exciting because I want to know how much power this makes. I'm tired of working on it, I want to drive it. So, since the last video, we figured out how to keep the belt on. And what the issue was is there are 3 spacers that go in between the bracket and the power steering pump. And one of the spacers, the outside diameter was too big, and it was sitting sideways on the pump body, and it was causing everything to be crooked, and it would just keep throwing the belt. Aside from that, I had to change the spacing on this idler here and this idler here because the belt was walking off the back side of this one and the front side of this one. So what I found out from LS Simple Murphy up there is I'm the first person to receive this bracket, which is cool but not at the same time. Being in the aftermarket performance industry, I know how things go. Parts don't fit. Any aftermarket part I get, I have to modify to make it fit. It's just part of the game. I wish that this went a little bit easier, but luckily I have enough experience to make everything work. If this kit would have been shipped out to Joe in his garage in California, he'd have probably been pretty pissed. But luckily I've got the tooling here and a little bit of knowledge to help me get everything together. The last thing that we're going to do is, instead of this idler here being a 6 rib, I asked him to send me an 8 rib wide idler like this one, because when the truck is running, the belt tends to move on this idler a little bit, and it's because you're spanning from here all the way down to here. And if you look, I can actually take this belt and move it on the idler, which I am not a huge fan of. So I'm also going to be upgrading this belt to an HD green belt. We use green belts on every blower system that we do up here because they're stronger, they grip better, and they don't stretch as much. This belt stretches a lot, and it's in part because it's really long, so it's understandable. But I want to get something on there that I know I'm not going to have a problem with. And here is the big piece that I've been waiting for. This is from Rhodes Race Cars, and you can actually buy these on Summit, or you can buy it directly from Rhodes. This is a 12 by 12 by 9 intercooler ice tank with the big lid. So as you can see, this tank is actually set up to have an in-tank pump. Has your wire connections right here on the outside. I did not want to put the in-tank pump in this because I have a stock CTSV pump that I'm going to use, which I don't think is going to flow as fast, which is kind of going to help. When you're talking about heat exchanger and intercooler systems, if you flow the water too fast through your heat exchanger while you're driving down the street, it doesn't have a chance to cool down. So the pumps that they sell with the Rhodes ice tanks, they flow a lot of gallons per hour. So it would just constantly be running through the system, and I think it would actually get hotter than if I slow it down, run it through the heat exchanger slower, let the air get through it, and help cool it back down. Now at the racetrack, it's a different story. I'm going to be putting ice in this thing because I can. I don't have to, but it's going to help cool the inlet air charge. So if I had the big in-tank pump at the track, it's going to circulate the ice cold water through it quicker, which would be a good thing. But I think the CTSV pump will work for what I need to do. I'm going to start with getting the grill off the truck, and I'm going to grab the heat exchanger. It's a stock ZL1 heat exchanger, and see if I can even fit it in here. It might be a really tight fit. I might have to figure out something on that. And then I'm going to relocate the coolant expansion tank. I need to move it back about 1 inch, which should be fine. It only has 2 bolts that hold it in, and all the lines are long, so I should just be able to slide it back. And then I'm going to start trying to fit that ice tank in here, which is probably going to be removing part of the inner fender structure, which race truck, so that's fine, lighter weight. And then I have to go pick up some pie cuts, and then I am going to make a cold air intake for this thing, but that's going to be in a separate video. Be sure you watch out for that one. So let's get started on this. I want to get it done today. Okay, so first things first, always start with your biggest component and try to get that to fit first. I've got the fittings to go in here, so this is going to be feed to the pump, return from the lid, and this is a drain, and this is a vent. So I'm going to put a few fittings in this real quick and try to get it to fit in here. So this is going to determine where everything else goes, where the pump goes, how the lines go, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll pull the grill out real quick, and then I'm going to loosen, let me get the camera straight, then I'll loosen the coolant expansion tank and see about getting that thing to fit in here. Alright, you can see I got the grill out, and I've got a big trans cooler here already, but I think I've got enough room to get the heat exchanger up here too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remake these little mounting brackets that I have and push this back towards the AC condenser, and then I'm going to slide the heat exchanger in here and pop the grill back in and see if I got enough room for everything. Alright, so what I ended up doing is I just left the little cheesy brackets that I had on here, and I put a spacer in between the radiator support and the brackets that I made just to push this closer back to the condenser. Now, something you want to make note of is you never want these laying right on top of each other. There always needs to be an air gap between. If you stack all this stuff on top of each other, air won't flow through it. It gets all jammed up and everything gets hot. So make sure you always leave about a finger width gap between everything. So now I'll grab the heat exchanger, set it up here, and hopefully it won't be too bad to make some mounts for. We'll see. Alright, so here's the plan, I think. Hopefully. So there's a little rubber splash guard down here that kind of helps direct air up into the radiator. I'm going to take that out because I need this to sit a little bit lower just to clear the hood latch. It could actually sit in front of it, but I'd like to keep it tucked back a little bit. And then if you look behind it, the trans cooler lines are pushing it out maybe about an inch. So it's touching the grill at the bottom. So what I might try to do is get creative, and I might lift this up a little bit and push these lines back, but I'm gonna remove this rubber shield here because it's holding everything up as well. And then we'll make some mounts for the little baby heat exchanger. Okay, so here's the plan. Now that I have plenty of room to put this in here, you can see this is about how it's going to sit, right under the hood latch. A little bit will be covered up by the bumper, but no big deal. So what I'm going to do is probably grab some 1x1 square tubing, and I'm going to bolt it to this, and then I'm going to come up and catch this bolt hole that's already here. So bolt here, and then it'll stick up about this high. And then what I'll do on both sides, the bottom, this bolt hole stick up about this high, is then I'll get some spacers behind the heat exchanger here and just through bolt this heat exchanger. Now it's not that heavy. That thing maybe weighs 2 pounds. With water in it, it might weigh 6 or 7. So just gonna get some metal straps, come up and catch 2 points, and I'm not even gonna put a bar across the top. I don't think I'm gonna need it. Okay, I don't have any square tubing here at the shop, so I'm gonna have to go out and get some in a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'll start mounting the intercooler tank. I have to run out in a couple hours, so I'll get some tubing then. It is 8:30 in the morning right now, so in a couple hours I'll head out and take care of that, probably right after I get this tank mounted. So what I'm going to do is I'll pull the coolant expansion tank out of the way, and then I'll start mounting that. It comes with, well, I hope you all saw that. It comes with 4 mounting tabs already on it, which I'm probably going to have to cut off and make new. But once I get that thing out of the way, I'm going to try to stick that in there and see how far off it is. Alright, so obviously you can tell that it is sitting up way too high right now. And what's going on is the two front mounting tabs, one of them is hitting the back of the headlight, the other isn't hitting anything. So I might leave it there because it looks like it might be a good mounting point. And then back here, our tab is hitting the inner fender. Now I said I was going to cut the inner fender out, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen because race truck. And so let me cut the tab off the intercooler tank and see if I can get it to move about 2 inches forward, and then I'll mark the inner fender and start cutting that. Okay, so I've got the two tabs cut off. You can see now I can slide it forward up against the core support here, and the little electrical connections are going to be under this fender lip when I'm done, so I'm not worried about those. But what I have to do now is come in here and cut out some of this fender structure, which it's fine. I'm not really worried about it. I'd rather have this big old ice tank than not. So let's start cutting stuff. No going back now. Let's see how it fits. Okay, so there it is, sort of. I think what I need to do is bring the hood down and see if it's going to clear everything. I have a little bit more room that I can move this down. Not a whole lot though, without doing a bunch more modifying. This front corner is going to be the closest part. I think everything else will clear fine. There's another piece down here that I might cut out just to get this to sit down a little bit more, and then I'm definitely gonna have to trim the plastic inner fender as well. Okay, so I forgot to grab a video, but it actually does fit. And so what's happening right now is it sits on top of this ledge and on top of this ledge, and you can see how this is dropped down. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'll get a bolt over here on the tab, and then I'm gonna make this stand up a little bit higher and get another bolt, and then I'll just rest over here. And then once I get it bolted in place securely, I have to remount my coolant expansion tank, and then I'll go under the truck and cut the inner fender to fit around it. But that actually was a lot easier than I thought it would be, so we're going to keep rolling with it. Alright, so I'm getting some of the mounts made. Basically what I did is I took a 1-inch strip of 1/8 inch aluminum and ran it across the bottom of the intercooler tank, and this is just a 1/4 inch bolt. You can see I spaced them down a little bit so that this doesn't dig into the bottom of the tank. See, it still spins. And that is going to line up with this hole in the original airbox mount, and it's going to sit on top of this ledge and on top of this. So all that bolt's really doing is keeping it from sliding around. All the weight will be pushing down on these pads. Then what we have here is going to be our heat exchanger mounts. So the heat exchanger is going to mount to these 4 bolts, and then these are going to sit on top of the core support, and I'll drill a hole in the bottom and through bolt these onto the core support, and then we get to start running lines. So we have all of our fittings in the tank. This is going to be the return from the blower, this is going to feed the pump, this is our drain, and this is our vent. What I need to do is I need to drill a really small hole in the top of this fitting and then tighten it down. And this just allows for expansion and contraction of the fluid, so it's got somewhere to go. Because if you have this locked down tight and it builds pressure, you're going to end up blowing a line off or something like that. So as fluid gets hot, it expands, So small hole in the top of this will take care of that. All right, so here's the ice tank mounted, ready to go. And I got my coolant expansion tank back in. And all I did was drill a hole through the inner fender. It's got a mount that it slides onto on the fender. And then I just drilled a hole in the backside where the stud used to be. It's about an inch further back. Through bolted it through the fender. Now it's nice and solid. Ice tank's nice and solid. So I'm gonna get the heat exchanger mounted real quick. Okay, so you can see we've got the heat exchanger mounted up here in front of everything. So we got heat exchanger, trans cooler, AC condenser, then radiator, then fans. So that's what it looks like, and the grill does fit. I had to trim the grill just a little bit where these tanks stick out on either side. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna mount the pump probably down on the frame. Okay, so here is a stock CTSV intercooler pump. What I think I'm gonna do is I'll come under the truck and I'm gonna mount this down here because it gravity feeds from the tank, so you want it under the tank. And if I put it right here, then I'll be able to run the lines between the radiator and the frame up to the heat exchanger. So we're gonna put this guy right here, maybe over here, but probably on the outside of the frame because it'll be a little bit easier. So you can see what I did is I used one of the bumper support bolts to mount the pump with a big P-clamp. Seemed like the easiest solution. I didn't want to have to drill into the frame. So the tank is going to feed into the top of the pump, and then out the side of the pump is going to go to the bottom side of the heat exchanger. So I'm going to get those two lines on it real quick, and I don't have time to wire this today, but I will hook it up to a jump box to cycle the water through and make sure that I don't have any leaks. These are the fittings that I'm going to use for the intercooler tank and the blower hat. They're -10 push lock from Russell, and then I'm just using regular 5/8 heater hose. So 5/8 is -10. If you guys have ever been curious, they do AN sizes in 16ths. So -6 would be 6/16, -10 is 10/16, and if you divide your fractions, 10/16 is actually 5/8. So -10 fittings work with 5/8 hose. Okay, so we have all of our lines run. Their intercooler tank is plumbed, heat exchanger is plumbed. So what I'm going to do now is I'll pour about 2 gallons in here and let it air bleed for a little bit, and then I'm just going to hook up some wires real quick to the pump so that I can prime the system and get everything moving. I don't have time to wire it up today, so what I'll do when I come back in tomorrow is wire the pump and make the cold air intake. So a little bit about the routing. So you always want the water to be pushing up. So the tank gravity feeds the pump, and then you want to go into your bottom heat exchanger port, and then it's going to push the water up, fill it until it gets here, and then you're going to go into the bottom of your intercooler brick. Once it fills the intercooler brick, it comes out the top and it feeds back into the top of the tank, which will refill the tank, back to the pump, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to grab some water real quick and pour it in here and see if I can make a mess. Alright, so here's what we got. Now, remember I said before that the CTSV pump doesn't pump water very fast, and that's kind of what I wanted because I'm mainly going to street drive it. I want the water to stay in the heat exchanger for a little bit longer. If it was flowing through there really fast, then it would never have a chance to cool. So this is about the amount of flow that I was looking for. And then when I put ice in here and I turn the key on, it's going to start circulating that cold water, and it'll get everything chilled down before I make a pass at the track or whoop up on some Mustangs or whatever you may want to do. But anyway, that's going to conclude this video. I want to thank you guys again for watching. Always remember to comment, like, and subscribe. I need more subscribers. We're going for 5K. We're almost there. I'm at like 4,600 right now. I want to keep those numbers growing. I gain about 100 subs a day, which is awesome for a channel my size. And remember to check out my Instagram. There's always a link in the description below. And now we have High PSI TV merchandise. I've got shirts up for sale. There's a link in the description as well. I'll put a picture here. And I hope this has been informational. I'm going to come in here tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, and finish up everything, get the grill back on it, and wire in the pump like it's supposed to, and maybe build the cold air for it. So, hope you guys enjoy this. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.